Hey guys, how is everybody? Oh, it's been a crazy morning already. Absolutely nuts. Okay, let's go to comments. Who's here? Oh, I see RD. I see Michelle. Mike Page. I always like to say that. Mike Page. Um, RD, which is Dolphin. Valerie's here. Rolando. Penna. I don't think we've met. Rat's Nest. I don't think I've seen you in a while, pal. Okay, so let's see what we got going on. How's everybody's week? Hope it was so far so good. Anybody in the belt of where we're getting incredible cold and some snow? We haven't had a big snowstorm, but we've had multiple like 3 to 5 inches, um, which is a big pain in the rear, all within like 2 weeks. And then I hear we're getting snow. It was Saturday to Sunday. Now I hear it's Sunday to Monday, and it could be of great magnitude. I don't know how much they're speculating. I always hear it secondhand, so I don't really know exactly. And I woke up this morning, and then I don't know, maybe an hour and a half in. So the sun's been up for a long time, and um, it was. I look at the. We have an internal thermometer, so you could see outside. My husband's all into this kind of stuff, and it was negative 4.5 still, and the sun had been shining. I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, hour and a half. I'm not sure. What time does the sun come up? But can you believe that? Negative 4.5. And I don't know what it is right now. It's got to be warmer because it's now 1 p.m. And I spoke to my husband and he said, because he's about 2.5 hours away, and he said it's supposed to get up to 40. I'm like, well, that would be pretty cool. And then have a deep dive temperature again on Friday, then snow coming in, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so much fun, that whole heating bill, isn't it? All right, let's get to it. What are you guys up to? RD was the first in the house. RD Dolphin, nice to see you. And I see you have some really good news. Yeehaw! This is RD, and I have great news. SSA called me yesterday informing me I was approved. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate your weekly help with the chats. Oh, it's my pleasure. And mission accomplished, RD, right? Michelle gives him a little kudos. Mike Page as well. I love you guys. You're also supportive. And Valerie as well. And Michelle is saying, my initial application claim is still sitting in DDS for almost 5 months. Yes, it is. Just waiting for someone to be assigned to my case. California is long, it seems, just playing the waiting game. Yeah, they got little staffing issues, I think, because it's, as you know, the adjudicators are state employees doing the federal work. So depending on how many staff the California hires for that, I guess will depend on how many are in there. But we'll be pushing them a little bit more, of course, sending another letter, all that good stuff. Dolphin says, my onset date, and that's our date, is June of 2024, and I filed in October of 2024. I was initially denied and won on an appeal. I stayed strong and did not give up. Yes, that's the attitude. It's always going to get better one way or another. And I'm not just talking about Social Security, Disability, or SSI. You guys know how I feel about that. So you always have to keep your chin up and think positive. And I don't know, we all kind of have to have a gratitude thing. Believe me, I struggle with that myself. And then when I don't, I seem to do a lot better. And just so we can all put it in perspective, so Dolphin filed in October of 2024 saying that 6 months earlier or so, 5 months, was when he became disabled. And if it sounds like they established his alleged onset date to be June of 2024. His alleged onset date was June of 2024. They agreed with him. So just to throw in some information here for those of you may not be familiar with the waiting period. So he would have a waiting period from the month following the onset month. So July, August, September, October, November. Those are unpaid months. His first back payment is December of 2024 up until January of 2020. I'm sorry, did I say 2024? Yes, 2024 up to January of 2026. Those are going to be all back benefit months. So whatever his benefit amount is, basically his PIA, primary insurance amount, will be times by those months, and that will be his back benefits pay. And then going forward, it's just perspectives. So just a quick little educational there on the waiting period for those that are kind of newer. Rolando, hi. I wonder what you're up to. Oh, yeah, Rolando, right? Hope you're doing well. If you have any questions, Rolando, of course, put them in there. Thank you, Michelle. She's just confirming that I can be heard. And Rat's Nest, I want to know what's going on with you. Everything good? Little Nutty's in the house and says, is it possible to postpone ALJ hearings? It is, if there is a decent reason. If you just say, I got to go to a party that day and I don't know. So it's always up to the judge. If you've done it before, it might not fly. I find that they tend to be, if it's a claimant reason, I have a feeling that if it was, say, an attorney reason saying scheduling conflict, the ALJ is going to be like, tough tooties, go get someone to cover it, you know? I think, because I think that, you know, we have to give our availability 5 months in advance, which I had a whole debacle with the availability central processing unit this last month. And I found out that they do not honor. We have to give it 5 months in advance, the first of the month. However, if the first falls on a federal holiday, any rational person would think, okay, it's the second. Now, you don't have to wait till the last day to file it, and that's all true. And I often don't. But June being a month where kids are getting out of school and all this kind of stuff's going on, I like to wait to the last day just to see if anything new is coming about in terms of the personal side of it that I would have to say not available. So I did it on the first day we came back, the first business day after the first. It was the second. And they said, out of time, now you have full availability. So what that means for us is, if it's full availability, they can schedule, any office in the country can schedule us whenever it wants. Now you could always normally, let's say you were like, I do have full availability, so I'm not even going to say otherwise, and I'll let it default to full availability. If we let it default, which was the repercussion of what I did, because it defaults to full availability, the rule is, you can no longer use central processing unit to submit any changes in schedule. Everyone's schedule is going to change. I mean, it's 5 months in advance. Nobody even knows their schedule. Hearings aren't even scheduled out that far yet. Not to mention all the other work you have scheduled, meetings and whatever. So I said, but I asked, I go, you're not honoring. I go, the SSA actually has a policy, and here it is, POMS, that it bounces to the next business day. And they're like, this is our response. I'm like, okay, I'm going to share it to the world. Thank you. Which I did to like some of my closer colleagues, only because, you know, you have to know when a rule that is on the books suddenly is going to be arbitrarily not applied by the SSA, even when it's in the SSA rules too. Very strange. So a particular segment of the SSA is not using that policy. So at least we know now, because they didn't publish that. They never put that in their information that, by the way, the rule does not apply to this. Yeah. So what I had to do was send a letter. I did it this morning to every OHO that I have, that I'm in the ALJ process with, even though nothing's scheduled for June, and say, and so you know what I did? I'm like, I'm just taking June off from that. I'm going to schedule everything else, all my other work stuff. And rather than having to figure out their time zones and everything, I'm just like, okay, I'm not available for June. Thank you very much. Made it much easier on me. And there's plenty of other times, May, July, August, that they can schedule me for. But boy, did that really tick me off. Like they're trying to give you an incentive to get it in before the deadline so that if it's very inconvenient for you, you'll be more incentivized to do it. I'm the one that gets my stuff in like 8 months early. I'm ridiculous. So it really was frustrating for me when I thought I was following the rule in this one instance, and then I got nailed. So you live and you learn, right, guys? But yeah, little nutty, if you have a good reason, I would say do it as soon as you know you can't go, and you got to call the ALJ and you have to get permission. You have to explain, and then probably whoever answers the phone, the assistant's going to ask the judge, and et cetera, et cetera. I can't imagine them not doing it if you have a decent reason. And do it as soon as you get the hearing date and it's suddenly bad, because they don't give you guys the opportunity to give availability schedules. So I would like to think they would move it once for you. Fan Cave is in the house. Hi, Fan Cave. Hello. Got an update from my senator's office. The ALJ has decision back from writer. Wow, did you really bug them to hurry up the decision after you already had the hearing? Yikes. I hope to hear something in the next couple of weeks. Your videos and others have really helped. That's great. I'm fingers crossed for you. I have to tell you guys, that would not be something I would be doing unless it's been like, maybe if it's, well, no. If the ALJ is taking, let's say it's 6 months, I'll call the office and be like, what's going on? Is it still, I just want to make sure nothing fell through the cracks. And they'd say, oh, no, they were just waiting for the pool of writers to open up, blah, blah, blah. But I never think it's a good idea to rush somebody who's making a very important decision about you. It just doesn't seem like the wisest thing. And going to your senator's office, no less. You're basically spanking the ALJ now, publicly, with some kind of superior aspect, meaning the senators. And I just think that's something that I don't try to do while my client's case is hanging in the wind. Like, if I want to spank somebody, it's going to be after they're safely out of the way. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. Delia's in the house. Hi, Delia. She's congratulating RD. Rolando says, are lawyers' fee paid considered income? To the lawyer? Yeah. Of course. We work for it. We get paid. We pay income tax. Or we report it. Whether or not someone makes enough money to have to pay tax is a whole other thing. You might be asking, are the monies, and someone just asked us, I don't know if it was you, it might have been in a post, like a written post, but you might be asking, Rolando, if when you get your back benefits and it is shortchanged by the attorney fee because it's paid directly instead of you having to cut the check, is it considered income? I'm not a tax professional, so I'm going to just say this with more like a speculation. I'm going to make the presumption that it is until I hear otherwise, and you can tell me when you speak to your tax professional. That would be great if you wanted to report back to everybody. Because think about it. You get some income in. You hire a plumber, and you spend some of that back benefits on a plumber. You're going to still pay, you're still going to report the full amount you came in, that came in. Let's say you got $10,000 in back benefits. You paid a plumber $2,000. The $10,000 is still your income. It's your gross income. Now, if you can write off the plumber's thing because you have a business, so be it. Like, you fixed your office pipes. That would obviously be a business expense. That would be in a separate part of your tax return, and it would reduce your gross revenues down to gross revenues less business expenses, such as if you're a Schedule C filler outer on a self-employed 1040. Now, the one question is, and I'm not sure, but I thought I heard that workers' comp, when you get your quote unquote gross wages, but then the workers' comp attorney gets to pull out hers or his. I think I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, because again, I don't do tax law and I don't care to, but I think I heard that the workers' comp recipient might be able to declare part of it as the attorney fee to get the workers' comp. Now, if that's true, I don't know, but it's something to look into. And if not, is it true? If it is true for them, would it also be, it is also part of the law for Social Security? I don't know. I mean, I don't know because many, many people, in my opinion, unwisely, but you know me, I'm biased, do pro se cases. And sometimes they have no choice, so it's not like their choice to do it. And if you don't have, if you both get $10,000 in back benefits, you had the luxury of an attorney costing say $2,000, and that person didn't have the luxury of an attorney. They got the same gross amount in as you. Do they have to report? Do they have to ultimately be taxed on 10,000 while you're only taxed on 8,000 plus you got the benefit of an attorney? You follow what I'm saying? Like it might be something that would be not really fair. So the person that wasn't able to get an attorney gets screwed by taxes too. I don't know. Just some thoughts as my head spins around that a little bit. Valerie has an update to her. Oops. Why are you not clicking on here, Val? Oh my goodness. There we go. Valerie has an update about her situation if anyone is interested. If you want to post it. And just as a refresher, guys, I think Valerie was talking about she had legally gotten rid of her payee representative, but her payee representative was charging her for a month that she thought she shouldn't be charged for, the $57 for the fee for the representative payee's job duties of paying her bills from her own money, blah, 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 from Valerie's own money. So, and, it was a question like, is she charging me for a month that she actually didn't ever do anything? But by that month, I had already paid my own, even though SSA hadn't quite made everything happen yet. Yeah, I'd be interested, Valerie, of course. Can you believe I remember those details? Ratsness says, when in and out of hospital, I am sorry, Ratsness, doing okay now. ALJ hearing in March, okay. Been seeing many doctors, specialists that don't note physical limitations, even though I make sure to do more than mention. If they're specialists, they're probably in a network. You probably have a patient portal, Ratsnest. So you need to start messaging them about your symptoms. In some way, shape, or form, that's going to work. And that could vary. So you're going to have to use your thinking cap there. But, before every visit, I would be messaging in saying, hey, these are the things that I want to discuss. I know sometimes these complaints don't get into my record, and I think it's really important for you to know so you can properly evaluate my condition. Because sometimes you have to really just spell it out like a kindergartner to them. And, because what you say, if the official record set is ordered, those messages should be in there. It's part of the patient-doctor communication. If you go in the portal and print out let's say it's Epic MyChart, and you can pick up print out the whole available from X date to X date, they're not going to be in there. For some reason, they exclude them from the portal download. It infuriates me. I think the people that are litigating things about medical records and portals should get on that and change that, because that's BS, in my opinion. It's a communication of your symptoms. How can they dare to exclude it? RD is on cloud 9. Yeehaw. Patriots in the house. I got my medical source statement from doctor. A nice pick, by the way, there, Patriot. I got my medical source statement from the doctor. It says nothing over 10 pounds lasts longer than 12 months, 3 days a month, then off. 3 days a month, meaning you can work 3 days a month, off at least 6 hours. Sitting impairments will continue to be a problem while at work. That sounds like it could be favorable depending on your vocational profile, which would be mostly your age in this condition. Not bad. Patriot's pointing out that she left off time of treatment. What do you mean time of treatment? You mean like I started treating him on X date and then it ended on Y date? If that's what you mean, Patriot, I wouldn't be too concerned, because you should already have all her medical records in the SSA file. It's going to show your first date that you saw her, last date you saw her, boom, and everything in between. So it might not be handwritten by her that way, but the information's available. So, and the judge will figure it out. Patriots got a hearing in 2 weeks. Should my attorney send this in? Do you think this would be beneficial for onset appeal date? Oh, your hearing is for appealing an onset date. Well, I don't know. She did say it lasted longer than 12 months. Or did she say it's going to last longer than 12 months? You're going to have to talk to your attorney about that. So call up your attorney. Or if he's like us and we don't want to answer the phones, message him and get the message back. Hopefully they have a message system like we do. Do they even look at these medical? Yes. Okay, so yes, they absolutely do look at medical source statements. And unless the doctor's statement is filled with things that are reserved to the commissioner, such as a statement that says, and I see people get this from their doctors all the time, and I want them to say, watch the video, don't do that. If the doctor writes a letter saying, my patient, I've been treating him from X date to Y date, he cannot work. He is not able to work. He has a very bad back, and he has feet pain. The conclusion of he can't work is reserved for the commissioner, because that is a legal conclusion based on vocational information that the doctor does not speak to, and the doctor's presumably not a vocational expert with like 0 credentials in vocational rehabilitation and all that stuff, all the credentials that they use to retain vocational experts. So I don't know. Yours says more than that, though. But yeah, if it doesn't have the date, I mean, that was the whole point, right? Like, would she say that you've been in this particular predicament with those particular levels of limitation, in her opinion, since at some date prior to what your established onset date was? That's how I see that. Let's see, Valerie. But yeah, they look at medical source statements. That's they have to. They're required to. They might disregard it. They might say, I'm not giving it a lot of water because of this, this, and this. But they have to. And if they don't, it's probably an appealable issue. It's like a majorly important thing. Valerie says, I spoke with a very nice lady from the PA call center. PA, is that Pennsylvania? She was so helpful. Anyway, she believes that my payee wasn't entitled to my January fee. She said that's considered misuse of funds. Yeah, this is what we talked about last time, right? If she takes her fee out for work she didn't do. And I remember we were talking about, like, who would do that? Who would screw around with a federal agency for $57 lousy? I mean, come on. She probably will just be asked to pay it back, and they won't do anything about it beyond that. And that's probably fine. She'll get a spanking. She'll have to take the time to write the check and all that other business. But I remember being like, why would somebody do that for $57? You're really willing to denigrate your own ethics, your own morals, if you have any, and potentially get in trouble. Potentially, it could have been criminal. Let's say you didn't do anything let's say you didn't realize, Valerie, if she was still collecting a fee off you. I don't know how she would do it once you got control of it, but for a year, that could be potentially worthwhile for the OIG to send for prosecution, right? It's a year. It's 12 times of a deliberate act. It's not like neglectful. Little Nutty says, what questions should I ask my legal representatives so that I can become assured they're prepared for the ALJ? Probably nothing. Okay. They're not going to redo the whole case in front of your eyeballs of everything they've done. And their job and the only way they get paid is if they're prepared for the ALJ. So sometimes when you hire somebody, you have to go on a little bit of faith, particularly if they've been responsive, communicating, like you're not out there waiting for 3 months for a response and all that kind of business. Sometimes you just have to have a little faith. And I say that because they literally, if you ask them to stop working on your case, to go give you a reiteration of the last 12 months of work, I don't know if they're going to have the staff to be able to do that little accommodation for you, because it's not little. And now they're not working on your case because now they're busy revamping everything for you. It's a little, it's expecting too much. I mean, I think if you say, hey, are you prepared for hearing? You're going to, what do you think? What kind of response do you think you're going to get? So just try to flip flip the roles. If you were them, what would you be thinking about someone who said that to you after you've been working on the case? You know what I mean? And I get it. You probably don't communicate with them a lot, or they don't with you. So you're like, I get your angst. I just don't know that it's going to be a productive thing you can do. I mean, if you had to ask them something, say, hey, I told you on so-and-so date, see the portal message where I told you all of my last dates of treatment with all of my providers. Look in the message thread where I report those to you. Have you ordered all those records? Are they in? Blah, blah, blah. I just want to know to make sure everything's up to date. You could say that. You're still kind of maybe stepping on toes, but you could say that. Just be like, sometimes you can be humble about it. Like, I'm losing sleep over this. Can you just give me a little reassurances? I just want to make sure with my kind of luck, things fall through the cracks or whatever. Now that I don't have other confidence in you, whatever. But, I would just do it carefully because they're doing what they do. They probably have some sort of process just like we do, and they're doing it. And I keep rolling, guys. My saga with my rolling chair. It's like crazy. All right. Mr. Pet Mama 4. Oh, yeah. I got like 16 or something ridiculous. And I know you guys can't, well, maybe you can see her. She was taking a little nap. It's a mess over here. There she is. That's just one of them. So Mr. Pet Mom says, I filed in June of 2021 and was denied twice. I contacted my state rep since it was taking so long. Not long after that, I got a letter from SSA letting me know my case had been assigned. Okay, so you were denied twice. Sounds like you must have reapplied. If you were denied twice, it means your next thing would be, you were denied on initial and denied on recon. And your next thing would be an ALJ hearing. And that usually isn't about being assigned. I mean, although technically we do get assigned an ALJ. So I'm guessing you refiled again. Probably have a newer application. And it took a while to get a DDS adjudicator. Because it is first in, first out, guys, unless you're on that dire list or the priority list. Which, includes people who are about to lose their homes. It can include some 100% PNT veterans. People that there's a little extra component in there that makes it more dire than for the rest of us. And it still doesn't go very fast, so much for that. But it's a sign. So hopefully you were working on your case while you were waiting, and now you have a stack of this much medical treatment records of really good, strong medicals between time A and time B, and now is your time to get it to your adjudicator. So get your fax machine ready or get your scanner ready and get to work. Fan Cave said, once the ALJ has a decision back from the writer, how long before it is mailed? It probably varies, but I think it's pretty fast because he wants it off his case because, they probably have scoring things for, expedition and doing things in a timely manner. So I think it'll be really fast. If you have an attorney, he could see the decision as soon as the judge signs it. So the judge has to look at it. I don't know how much they thoroughly look at it. I don't know if they have their attorney advisor look at it and they'll be like, oh, yeah, it's good. I don't know. Once they've given it out, I don't know how thoroughly they read it. They might just confirm that the end result is exactly what they said they were deciding. Don't know. Don't know the inner ears of the ALJs. They don't share that kind of dirt with us. But I think it'll be fast now. So try to have a little patience. Remember, you might be rushing. Why rush for a no, Valerie says, great job, Stephanie. The gal from Pennsylvania call center filled out a report and I went to my local field office for investigation. I hope I don't need a payee again. I may have burned that bridge. Why? Oh, you can get a different one. And did you say she was an institutional representative payee? Must have been, because individuals are not allowed to get paid to be a representative payee unless they are an approved institution, business approved by the SSA, probably have to have some training, blah, blah. So they have plenty of others that'll be willing to take you $57 if you ever needed it. So, and that's if you don't have a trusted loved one who could do it for you for nothing. Make sense? All right, where are we at? Valerie says, also the gal at Social Security said that if I need a payee again, that there are options. Yes, she was the most courteous agent I spoke to. Yeah, I find them to be usually pretty nice. You occasionally get one who, if you're telling them something that needs to be corrected, they might get their short hairs in a bunch. That's always been the case, 21 years. That's human nature of some humans. Some are more humble and understanding and not ashamed to say, oh yeah, that looks bad. Let me help you get that fixed. And others will just, their bristles will go up, and that won't be the case. Some people can't take a critique, even if it's of the agency and not themselves personally. Mr. Pet Mom says, I finally had my hearing last month and was approved, yeehaw, while on the phone with the ALJ. He said it shouldn't have gotten this far. Oh, that's like a great, great response. And, it was kind of sweet of him to kind of let you know that he thought, and they don't do this a lot, that he thought they screwed up. Usually it's not a matter of them screwing up. It's a matter about the evidence got better. And now he can make the decision that you want because they couldn't, because the evidence wouldn't have supported it and it would have been overturned. And that's understandable. I think that's largely true. I appreciate that he kind of said to you, so you don't think you're losing your mind. You had it right all along, lady. You know what I mean? Or sir, I don't know. It's a pet mom. Maybe it's a guy. Because it's Mr. So that's good. I like that he did that. Valerie congratulates. And Mr. Pet Mom got his first check today. Are you doing debit card or are you going to do direct deposit, Mr. Pet? I think you got to do either one. They're not going to keep sending you checks. Unless what you meant was you got your first payment, which might have been what you meant. Rat's Nest says, doctor also reduced high doses of diuretics. Okay. That was a strong part of my many limitations. Well, so basically what he's saying is we're adjusting your medications because the symptoms coming from your high dose of diuretics, I assume that meant you were in the bathroom a lot, was adding to your limitations. If the doctor's note says that you have carpal tunnel and we propose surgery and you didn't have that kind of diagnosis or a set plan can even help kind of bolster the diagnosis because it kind of suggests that you've been saying it's severe enough for that. Yeah, you're going to want to get those records in. Every single medical record, period. It's actually your obligation, so good, bad, or ugly. Mr. Pet Mom says, thank you. I'm still waiting on my back pay. So that's just a little point I'll add in here, guys. So people always say, when am I going to get the... Sometimes you get your prospectus before they even figure out your back pay. Sometimes the back pay comes first before the next month's payment is due. So it can be either way. Patriot, you are welcome. Heather Ash is in the house. Hi, Heather. I had to close out of this to call. So I apologize if it was answered already. I had to close out of, I don't know what that means. I called my uncle. He's been doing taxes for 30 plus years. He's 99% sure SSD attorney fees are not counted as income. That'd be super sweet. Guys, do your due diligence. You could probably go to ChatGPT and find out a preliminary. I say preliminary because you still got to do your research. What you could do is maybe go there, ask the question in the right way, and then say, and give me a citation as to what website you got that information from. Because everything that goes into one of these AI chats, and there's ChatGPT, there's Claude, there's Perplexity, there's a ton of them out there. I mean, it's a lot of competition out there for your attention. So if you ask the question and they make sure he gives you a citation to the exact authoritative source that chat got it from, then go to that source and look at it and see that it says that because they are fallible and you have to check everything they say. They might be referring to a rule that became rescinded or whatever. And I'm just saying this generally speaking, not about this particular thing. But that's helpful. That would be really nice, Heather. I would be spreading that word loud. because that's really good for the lawyers too, right? People will be more inclined to use them. Heather says, due to SSA paying it directly from back pay rather. No, yeah, that's not it. Yeah, that wouldn't be the reason. Due to SSA paying it directly from back pay rather than sending it to you and having you pay it out. Yeah, that's not really how that works. Yeah, that wouldn't be the basis. I do not believe. Just because they facilitate the payment. You know what I mean? So for instance, I'll give you for instance, Heather. Sometimes SSA forgets to withhold the attorney fee and they send a whole check to the client. And then the attorney has to say to the client, all right, cut me a check for X amount. This is the amount the SSA approved. It's right in your award. Person cuts them a check. You think they're going to have it treated differently since the SSA forgot to withhold? Like now suddenly they get it tax free. So I don't think that's the basis. That's all I'm saying. It shouldn't be. It should. What I think it should be is treated as if SSD is in theory wage replacement. It's insurance that pays a portion of the wages that you are no longer able to earn. And that is probably one of the reasons why SS is taxed or part of the tax scheme generally for when you receive it. It's wage replacement. You would have been taxed on it if you earned it. This is like a portion of the theory. So if that's so, then when we work for something, except when we're W-2, but if we're self-employed doing work and we have to expend money to be able to make that paycheck or make that income come in, get, like let's say I have to hire an accountant to figure out some Social Security tax things. I got to pay him a fee for his time so that I can then use that, what I learn in my business. I can write off that bill from the accountant because I needed that to actually be able to then do that work and get that fee that generated after I knew that legal principle or whatever, or accounting principle. So I could see, and I think it would be appropriate. It's one of the reasons why I think SS shouldn't be taxed. It's wage replacement, but it's already discounted, or if it's not wage, it is wage replacement. But if it takes you, if like wages, it takes you money to win it, like using an attorney, wouldn't that be write-offable? Like any other service you buy, you pay for to be able to produce revenue from work. So I guess that's how I look at it. But we'll see. But I appreciate the input because it gives us a place to start. And I appreciate your uncle for sharing what he thinks he knows. 99%, that's pretty high confidence. Mr. Pet Mom says, the judge said, due to my age, it should have been a grid out. Well, yeah, if he did grid you out. And it's funny because a lot of my cases are grid cases, and if I have to go to hearing, it's because they all got denied down below. So what then happened is it wasn't a grid out below because they found you at a higher exertional level than the grid would allow you to win. So they applied the grids. You didn't pass it back then because they had you at, say, medium or light, depending on your age. And that was too much to even fit the grid rule. So you couldn't be gridded out. The judge found you had a different exertional, a more reduced one, and that fit the grid rule. So Heather says, dire need only helped me be denied faster the first time round. I like your sense of humor, and I hear you. It doesn't change the result, guys. Dire need. Remember, it's not needs-based. It's are you disabled-based from all jobs. Thank you for the reminder. Property taxes will be due again before we know it. Tell me about it, right? We got some due in what? Usually April? And then again in September for the school tax. Considering how bad the schools are, it's really atrocious. I don't know. Really bad. Robert Sherbring says, and hi, Robert. I don't know that we met. I thought your name looks a little familiar. Thanks for providing such a valuable service. Oh, I am thankful for you for being here, Robert. I'm a parent of a DAC whose psychiatrist of 15 years left the practice, so the nurse practitioner took those patients. Does nurse practitioner carry the same weight with SSA? They are considered, except if she's a nurse practitioner in that field, like advanced nurse practitioner, advanced registered nurse practitioner. See, it depends what your state calls it. There's a variety of terms. If the person is advanced, and in the particular in psychiatry, it can be just fine. And the fact that you have 15 years with the psychiatrist, you already have a very strong basis. So, every state defines their levels of nursing differently because that's a state designation. So the SSA tries to get a grip on which ones would be considered. There is a, I don't know if it's a POMS or an SSR or a reg. When they did all this happened around 2017. The rule changed. Some of it bad, some of it good. One of the good ones was they recognized that, listen, most people are not even treating with MDs anymore because their insurance companies won't pay the MDs. They'll only pay for PAs and MPs and whatever. So they kind of recognize that is now the new treating provider. And I'd say it seems like it's almost more than not that you're with somebody. I mean, my primary care is a PA, and I like him. He's good. He has a lot of experience. I mean, he's not a young chickie. He's an older one. Yeah, Heather's saying hi to the birdie. She's sleeping now. She had a little salmon with me for lunch. Yeah, she eats some of that stuff. Valerie says, an organizational payee. I'm just hoping they don't do this to other people. Yes, normally that call center's agents have been neutral and not too courteous or not too rude. Yeah, I don't mind them being neutral. It's not their job to be like, Sally Sunshine. Just don't be rude. But on the same token, I don't think we, as on the other side of it, should be rude either, of course. And I'm not saying that for you, Valerie, because I know you're always nice. Just in general. Mr. Pet Mom says he's a she. Okay, very good. I'm using direct deposit. Excellent. Good choice. And what's good about direct deposit, guys, is A, it pops in really fast. You don't have to worry about a lost check in the mail. Huge problem. Or checks being stolen. Has been a huge problem also. I believe it's even been a huge problem by having workers in a U.S. Postal Center stealing the checks when they came in. It was crazy. I think I reported it on the Fridays, one of the Friday Fraud Law Review segments. Crazy. But also what's good is if you change your bank, you can go right into, for the direct deposit, you yourself can and must go online and change it. That way they know it's through you. You did it through that very protective, probably two-factor authentication to get in. You can't call anymore and just pretend to be you and say, I want to change my banking information. And they change it to that Nigerian scamster, 3 continents over. Valerie says, I set up a bank account for my favorite bank. It says paper check, but also February 3rd, effective date for my direct deposit. We'll see for February 3rd. Yep. Usually they'll do the first one because they haven't gotten it set up yet. But then that buys them time, so you get your check on time. And just cross your fingers that it arrives in the mail. Keep an eye out for it. Valerie says, I'm glad the SSA took the attorney fee before I even got back. Oh, got back money. Yeah, that's what my clients usually say. Hey, I got a back check. What do I owe you? And by then I haven't gotten word whether we got paid or not. Usually I get that like quarterly because I don't really, I don't know. It's just not something you can spend your time worrying on. You just have to have kind of faith that they're rolling in. Let the bookkeeper handle it. But it's usually like, sometimes they'll say, hey, what's the total amount? And, if we have the award letter, I'll be like, all right, so it says this date to this date. You're getting $1,000 a month, and they said you're supposed to be getting paid $12,000, and you got paid 9,000. Yeah, that's all yours because that means they took out the 3,000 for the attorney. All right. It's nice, yeah, if you don't have to worry about cutting a check. Once in a blue moon, they screw it up, but they've gotten a lot better lately, I think. Before applying for SSD, you can find on my Social Security page, it will give a dollar amount that you will receive. Oh, okay. So this is what he's talking about. Little nutty. 70, if you know what I'm talking about, have you found this amount to be right? Okay, so what he's talking about is if you have not applied yet, so you don't have a pending claim. And I say this to everyone, this is what all of our pre-application clients do before it's part of the first packet. And we don't really apply until we get all the packets. So the first one says, go get your Social Security earnings statement off of the SSA.gov website. And now, as you know, since like last year, since like 2024, you have to go through SSA.gov, but it's going to direct you to a page that says you can be authenticated via login.gov or through id.me. So you pick one. I happen to do login.gov. I'm not sure what the big difference is. And once you get yourself connected to your own account by identifying information, and you probably have to do a password and all that, then you go in there and you look for something to the effect of earnings statement, annual earnings statement, something like that. It is the same document that they used to mail to us. Some of you younger people won't remember this, but some of us olders do. About a few months before every birthday we had, we got a letter from the Social Security Administration from the time we were 18 and above showing our work history. If we hadn't worked, I don't think they send you another one. So it's to update you. And we would toss it in the garbage because we didn't really care and didn't know why it was important. Totally different world now, at least for me. But I used to do the same thing. And if you go in, you can get it online now. They stopped mailing them to save money. That was maybe around 2010, 2011. And I thought it was a good idea. Why send them out and all of us young people just think use it as toilet paper? And that will show you your work history. And on the other side, it will show you, like on one of the pages, what you can expect. You know, whether you're insured today, the day you download it for SSD, and how much it would be, and then how much your family could get combined with you, if you have family, if you were to get SSD. If you were looking at SSR, what would it be at 62? And then what would it be at 67? And what would it be at 70? And those are things for people that do not become disabled. They want to know, what am I looking at for retirement? There is fine print for the retirement ones. I'm just going to add this in there. The fine print is, this is an estimate. We are assuming, you have to assume some things when you estimate. We assume that the income you earned this past year that was reported, that we're reporting to you now as your last year, and that has been used in this calculation, we are assuming that your income continues that way until, I think it's age 62, your first possible takeout at early retirement age. So if you do not continue to work and make at least the amount that you just made, if you stop working, you become disabled but don't file and win, whatever, that number gets decimated for many people. So it's definitely something you want to consider when you want to take off work for a few years. And you will lose the opportunity to see that estimate side. You can still see the earnings side. You can't see the estimate of the benefit once you trigger your application. So don't do it. Do it now. Download it now before you apply, if you haven't already applied. If you're in the middle of an application, you're not going to be able to get that information. But you can get your earnings information. You want to make sure that's all correct. Art of the Practice is in the house. And he says, hello, Stephanie. How soon before an ALJ hearing? And I said he. I shouldn't say that, Art. You could be a girl. How soon before an ALJ hearing must a hearings office exhibit medical records? Less than 30 days may not allow enough time for the claimant to review and attain any missing records. You are so right. So here's the problem that Art is bringing up. And I have a letter that I historically have sent to ALJ offices when they have scheduled a hearing and they haven't even exhibited the file. My letter basically says you're out of order. You know, your schedulers jumped out of order. The case is not ready for hearing because it's not exhibited. Because it always says your case is ready for hearing. No, no, no. It's not ready for hearing because it is not exhibited. So, and I agree fully with what you say. Now, you can see what's in the file if you get a copy of the whatever disc they have. But the argument still goes, yes, but judge, you have not said whether all of those things are going to be allowed to be evidence. And if that piece is not evidence, then I got to go get another one to, you know, substantiate that point of that piece, or whatever the argument would be. But I agree with you fully. It has been a pet peeve of mine. I never hear anyone talk about it, probably because they don't actually look at their records and they just go to hearing and sit there. But as a lawyer, to me, it's infuriating. And what I do now, we still push on without the exhibit label. We actually rename each exhibit by the amount of pages in the exhibit. PP 91, PP 12, PP. There might be 10 PP 10s because some are going to have the same, you know, number of pages. So it'll be PP 10A, PP 10B, so that when they do finally get their crap together and they exhibit them, it'll be easy for me without having to go read through. Be like, oh, okay, that's PP 12. We only have one PP 12. That's exhibit 3F. I mean, this is the silly little minutia that is infuriating. If they just did not schedule the hearing until after they completed the step of making the file ready for hearing, if they just followed their own policy, that would all be solved. Art, you really hit a good point there because it is infuriating. So until then, we pretend that every single thing is going in, and we cite to them as, because I'll do my brief, and instead of saying whatever I'm saying and then the citation of 3F at page 25 to reference that quote that the doctor made, it'll say PP 25 or PP 43 at page 25. And I will say, if I have to send I mean, on the rare occasion that it's actually not done, you know, 30 days beforehand, I will say these do not have exhibit labels because your office had not timely exhibited them, period. And then I send it in. Yeah, it's just, that is one of the maybe 1,000 pet peeves of things that waste my time, you know, instead of like good old substance working on the file. Excellent, excellent, excellent art. Mr. Pet Mom says, is there an established amount of time before a back pay is released? There is not. But I will say, as soon as they figure out what it is, they will release it. So whether they stall in figuring out what it is, maybe it's in someone's inbox and they haven't gotten around to it. Person number 2 has to double check that person number 1 did it right. I don't know if they have a check system. I hope they do. I would imagine they do. So that would be a no. But I would say if it's more than, I'd say 2 months is a long time. I would start making phone calls. And you're probably going to get, if it's SSD, you might get someone at the field office saying, we don't have that here. But I know they can send a message to the payment center because it's at the payment center at that point, probably. And they'll say, I can't really do anything, but I could send, please send a message. Please tag them. Please email them, whatever. You're like, yeah, please do something. And if it went on really long, that would be a senatorial congressional inquiry. Maybe if it went on past 3 months after you tried, you know, what I just told you. Kevin Johnson says, Kevin Johnson's in the house. Nice to see you, Kev. Kevin told us that he prevailed last week, which is awesome. Hello from Tennessee. A word letter to be here in 10 to 15 days. SSI at step 4. Awesome. That means, by the way, that he gritted out if he won at step 4. Essentially. Pet Mom says they've already figured it out. They also, no, not necessarily. They have to do background checks to make sure you don't have certain liens. Do you have federal liens? Did you not pay taxes in the past? Did, it's another one. Any alimony arrears showing up in any of the court systems that you haven't paid alimony and it's in arrears? Same with child support, federal debts. probably school loans that are defaulted, that kind of thing. So it's not always as simple as it appears, right, guys? Yeah, right. And ostensibly it will be if you don't have any of those liens. Half Pint's in the house. Thank you, Stephanie, for all you do. You as well, Half Pint. All right, guys. We are at the near hour mark. I don't see any more questions. Maybe we can ski down a little early. What do you think? Not that I don't love spending time with you, but of course. But I am working on multitude of things right now all at once, so I don't mind. I'm not offended. Oops. Okay, a few more. Mr. Pet Mom says, none of that applies to me, thankfully. Yeah, and I'd say it rarely does in any of my cases too, but the ones that it does, they just have to do it. So I think it's something they have to like run through, and it's usually pretty fast. Oh, another one that could be a holdup is workers' comp. If there was indication that you had a workers' comp claim or should have or did or whatever, they need to. This is a real pain. They should have gotten the information in the beginning. Well, actually, they shouldn't insist on it in the beginning, but they should ask if you have it. But and they should be willing to take it at any point thereafter, I would think. But because it really doesn't come into play until you win. But there could be a workers' comp offset, and that will, so you'll have your gross amount, and then it's offset by, if you breach the 80% workers' comp offset rule, they will have to carve a little off the top of your SSD, or they won't because you haven't gotten anything workers' comp yet. It's still in the process, and it's going to have to come out of the workers' comp area, perhaps. Somehow they work a little jointly, and I don't follow the workers' comp, as you all know. I steer clear as best I can. Erin's in the house. Hi, Erin. Oh, and I should say CG, sorry, is in the house again. Nice to see you. Erin says, my examining doc did an MRFC. I think she's referring to a mental residual functional capacity assessment with several markedly for in B column, number 4 in the B column, she's saying, after hearing. Judge sent it to a medical examiner, a medical expert, who checked a moderate and 1 markedly. Isn't that cute? 56 years old, I requested supplemental judge agreed advice. Yeah. Did you have an attorney, Erin? You did right. You know what I will also maybe do? So let me just explain to everyone here what seems to be going on, and let me know if I'm wrong here, Erin. Erin went to I think you went to a hearing. She had her own doctor give an opinion as to how severe, if at all, these certain criteria of mental health basic tasks capacities we have to have. So there's a list. There's like can pay attention for up to 2 hours straight. Simple things. Can work around others without overly distracting them. Can work uninterrupted for, I don't know if it does a reasonable amount of time or 2 hours or whatever, without psychological symptoms interfering with their ability to perform their work for that period of time. Doesn't have to be 8 hours straight, but like they want like at least like 2 hour chunks usually. Ability to interact appropriately with supervisors, coworkers, and the public. And the options are mild to no limitation, moderate limitation, marked, and I say marked. I know some people say marked. I say marked to make clear the difference between marked, which is totally kind of separate, like I marked the paper, and extreme. Extreme is like you've completely lost the capacity altogether. Marked is you've largely lost it. It's very, very impaired, and it would definitely interfere with a work day, in that regard. Moderate is it's sometimes not. Moderate is one of those squishy words that are not helpful, and they don't win cases. Mild means even worse than that. So generally, there's 4 different areas, like adaptation, and then a bunch of examples for simple unskilled work. Persistence and pace and everything. All these, there's 4 different domains, and I can't think of them off the top of my head, guys, but I do have a list of them. And I know I have them in a video. And so you got the 4 different big sections, and then you'll kind of limit your attention to the ones that concern basic unskilled jobs. Not the can't pay attention to detailed complex instructions, because that's not going to win cases either if you can't do that. There's plenty of other jobs. You want to hit all the things that would interfere with a basic simple job. So if you have any one of those 4 domains, there's a substantial loss in the ability to do that domain, you're disabled, generally speaking, from all jobs, because those are necessary for the most basic, simple 3rd grade job all the way up to rocket science. Okay? So how does one achieve substantial loss? They don't define that term very well, but in the chart, which is different, which is what Erin's referring to, they have those mild, moderate, marked, and extreme options, like 4 boxes going across, and all the list of different kinds of tasks and where they would fall. If generally, I believe it is one extreme in any of those domains is going to knock out that domain. One marked will not. 2 markeds will. So 2 markeds for one extreme. And here this medical expert, who knows what he has to say to get a denial and knows what he has to say to give an award. And I'm not saying he's not being honest in his own head. I'm just saying he knows that's going to be a denial if the judge decides to agree with him. So he contradicted her doctor because her doctor's, well, potentially he did. The several markedly, where are they located and which things are they? Are they all the simple tasks? I have a forum that just uses the simple tasks because we like to get to the crux of it and not distract with the more detailed skilled work, because that's not the fight. That's not the battle. I mean, if your doctor did 2 markedly in the proper area, that would have meant disabled if the judge were to believe that. 1 moderate and 1 marked isn't going to cut muster with that. So yeah, I would probably do a supplemental. And maybe if your examining doctor, is that a treating doctor? That's not a CE, right? A one-time examiner? Was that if that was a treating provider, maybe you can ask him, can you give prime examples of what you know about me observationally, combined with the diagnosis and the presentation and the need for different medications, how all the medications, how all those things brought you to markedly. He obviously didn't say anything was extreme, which is actually good for you in life, but could be difficult in the case. And maybe if he fleshes it out more, because he's going to say things that the medical expert now doesn't know, and he has more information. And it used to be that the treating doctor, not just a mere examining doctor, but a treating doctor, would hold more water without, unless he's wildly inconsistent with his own records or that of others that treat you. His weight would hold more water than somebody who didn't treat you. But they got rid of that rule in it became, they were working on it in 15, 16, it became effective in 17, after being passed by the SSA in, I guess I want to say 16. I think those are the dates. But yeah, that was a big, huge blow. That's the treating provider rule that got decimated. And we didn't like it. We didn't like it then, we don't like it now. Yeah, and they got rid of it, and no one's ever brought it back. It didn't come back in all the years since then. They could have changed it, but they chose not to. All right, so that's a lot about that, guys. I hope that was clear, Erin. If not, I apologize. It's the explanation, but there are videos on those, the basic mental skills needed for even a most basic job, and everyone who has a mental health claim that's not based partially on physical, but it's saying just because of my medical, I can't work. It's just on, boom, I can't work at all. You need to know those things because those are the things they're going to be looking at. Fan Cave is hoping to hear mine soon. Didn't hear your answers to mine. I've gone through every single one. Did you leave the room, Fan? Maybe listen to the replay. I literally go downwards. So I didn't skip anybody because I didn't jump around today. But feel free to post them on any kind of, video in the comment section. I go through them all. I'm not as fast as I was of late, but I get to them. So no worries there, okay? Mr. Plump Mom confirms that he has no workers' comp, and no other impediments to getting paid quickly. So he thinks they're going to be paying him shortly. Again, you can always call. If it's been a week, I'd relax. Because just because you have none of these problems, that doesn't mean they don't have to check it. You know what I mean? They still have to do the checks because they're not going to take your word for it. Kevin Johnson says, will I get that 5 months of SSI? Not sure how that works. Kevin, are you getting SSD and SSI? If any of the waiting period of the SSD period, you also had an SSI application in at that time prior to those 5 months hitting, you could get SSI for those months if you were poor enough. And they will decide that if you're a concurrent case like that, you're going to have your perk interview for the SSI, and they'll figure that all out for you once you give them the answers. Valerie says, can I thank you before you go? You being here is my thank you, Valerie. Don't you worry. Aaron isn't Quick Aid. I think that's like a advocacy group, right? Not a law firm, I think, right? Quick Aid sounds like a beverage. Yeah, so they'll know what to do, right? Oh, yeah. Sometimes some places, and I'm not saying them, but some places are perceived by people to be more like a factory. And you don't even know, like, you don't interact with the same people. You don't interact with your lawyer doesn't message you. It's always just, someone you don't even know. RD says, thank you. You bet. It's good to see you, and I'm really happy for you. That's amazing. I love to hear these. This is why Wednesdays are my favorite. Aside from just being able to hang out with you guys for a little bit, hearing the good news. We do hear the bad news, too, when there's denials. And then there's a lot of support going on and recommendations and all that kind of stuff sometimes. Aaron says the MRFC, my examining doctor filled out, didn't have the option to check extreme. It simply wasn't on the form. Well, you gave it to him, or Quick Aid did. I can't speak to it. I don't know why that last one would be left off. Maybe, maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe you're not extreme. It's really bad when someone's extreme. But if you're claiming on a mental health and not like a combo mental health physical or over 50, presumably there's something pretty extreme. Hey, Limitless is in the house. Hi, Stephanie. What percentage of applicants have you found have been approved on round 1? Oh gosh. I can't give percentages. I don't know them. I will say it's not half. I don't think. Maybe between initial and recon, it's half. And then the rest are at ALJ. I really can't say. You try to get a feel for it. I know that when we do certain strategies before round 1, and by round 1, I think he's referring to initial. Like if we plan when we're going to start round 1, not when we're going to allege onset date. That's going to be behind. That's going to be in the rear window of starting round 1. But if we have some really good medical evidence that occurred after the person was still able to work, but even before we apply, that can be ideal because then they have some really strong evidence to consider on initial versus someone applying because they know they're disabled, but they haven't even really gotten to get PT yet. They're just like, oh, I had to stop working my ankle so that, So it really depends. And then a lot of cases you get in the middle of things and you can't even do that. So those are the ones that tend to have to go to ALJ hearing. Some, by their nature, are just going to have to go to ALJ hearing, particularly our younger people generally, unless they're going to be listing like they're really severe, and it's objectively proven. But other than that, so I don't know what it is, but I think I've mentioned this before. There's a waterfall chart. I don't know. I'm going to try to get my hands on a new one if I can cover the time to go try to dig around. It was put out by some advocacy group, I think, in New York. For years and years, they would put it out. And it was called the waterfall chart. It would say at the top of the waterfall, like a pyramid almost, it would say, I think this is how it went, percentage of people that want an initial. Now, remember, the percentage of people that didn't want an initial, they're going to trickle down and fill up the bottoms. Okay, now they're at recon. And the percentage of those, so it was, I just remember one year being, I feel like the most recent year I saw was 38% went on initial. So that means of the 62%, right, that don't win initial and which don't give up. So something smaller than 62% is left. So whatever that number is goes to recon. Of that amount, let's say there's 100 people, and I'm just going to, then 15% of them get it overturned. And then 85% of them have to go down to ALJ. So if that visually, I like the visual, if that visually helps some people to get it. But I thought 38%, that's not bad. Of course, that includes like the 90% of those that have attorneys and are in a grid, particularly a second tier grid, which have a higher rate of winning if it's done right, versus the younger people who, even if it's done right, have a lower chance of winning. And so you have your 1% chances mixed in with those 90, and that's how you get your 38%. You know what I mean? It's an average. Hey, Heather says, can't let you sneak out early. Should previous diagnoses not related to the primary debilitating condition be included? If they're still diagnosed, yes. And if you know you still have it, but they haven't been diagnosed in years and you're not treating for it, go start treating for them. Get the diagnosis re-diagnosed. Absolutely, you want to add everything for sure, big and small. They have to consider everything because small things can carve out little niches. And if I recall, you're kind of young, right, Heather? You're under 50. So you of all people need to do this more so than even the older ones, because you're trying to carve out every single job, and something that carves out 1,000 jobs, you're like, well, I don't want to carve out that. Yeah, but that's 1,000 out of the 12,000. You just got rid of almost 10%. Now you just got to work on the other 90%, right? I'm telling you. Erin says, my examining doctor was a specialist and the ME is not. That's helpful. I would point that out. Again, your examining doctor, is that a one-hit wonder, Erin, or did you treat with this guy? If it's an examining doctor, that means you paid him for one reason: examine me and say how bad I am. And that's, in personal injury world, when I used to do that, we used to call that plaintiffs, a word that sounds like whole, but it's not whole. That's what they used to refer to them to. Plaintiffs, it's the paid guy that'll say anything you want him to say. So that's what I mean. This is why we don't do that. We don't play that. Your treating doctor has got to be the one to hopefully be astute enough to know his own claimant, his own patient. He is an autism specialist. That's a specialist. I don't know what that means. Heather says, also, if I lost my job 14 months prior to filing SSDI due to issues that couldn't be figured out. Well, it's going to be in your work history, right? Are you talking about the fact that you had the job? Are you talking about, did you not pick a correct alleged onset date, Heather? Or are you just wanting to let them know that the reason why you left your prior job was because you were having difficulties with XYZ? You later found out that it was these now affirmed diagnoses that caused those symptoms and are still causing them today. But no, if you wait until a decision, then you don't get to use it. Nothing that you do after a decision, unless the judge leaves it open for you to add in more, which is unusual for no reason. I mean, if it's relevant, if you are going to be testifying, that's something you could say. When he says, I mean, you could take notes, give a note for yourself and say, well, I just want to remember to tell him this. Because sometimes they'll even say, hey, is there anything you wanted to talk, mention before we close out the hearing? And then that's your opportunity if you wanted to tell him something. I would probably keep it short because he's kind of being polite when he says it. It doesn't mean to give you a pedestal forever. They have a very strict schedule. And they have a hearing right after yours. So they don't really want to start getting everyone bottlenecked and late, which they inevitably do anyway, but they try to avoid it where they can. So Aaron says that I guess this medical non-treating provider did the 3-hour assessment and all the standard testing, which coincided with his. Yeah, so he's not a treater. He's just a guy you paid to. It's not. It's better than nothing. I would say it's better than nothing, but it's not going to hold a ton of water. Did he even have all your old records? Did he refer to them historically? The medical expert did. Generally speaking, they see the entire file, at least all the mental health parts, if that's the mental health part. So I just am not a big fan of the strategy of hiring somebody to support your side, because that's exactly what it's going to look like. And then that diminishes their reliability of the accuracy of what they say because they're conflicted because they got paid to say it. You know what I'm saying, guys? And, in jury trials, defense attorneys would bring that up all the time. And plaintiff's attorneys could do it to the defense, too, because all their doctors are paid. And they're only hired by the insurance company because they give the right answers, But the same thing is true here. You don't have a jury. The judge is not stupid. He knows. So. Russell Dixon is in the house. Nice to meet you, Russell. Glad you could join us. If you're talking about Medicare, I'm not going to opine on it. I don't know your case, and I'm not a Medicare attorney. So I'm not gonna be able to help you out there. Okay. If you wanted some sort of consultation, we have prepaid consults. You could do that, but I don't think you need it. Just call Medicare and find out. They're the experts. Okay. That is a stupid rule that these corrupt, money-hungry doctors can see someone once, then write a hit piece full of lies. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, are you talking about the consultative exam? You got to be careful. I mean, I would suggest being careful when you accuse the doctor of lying versus he sees things the way he sees them. And so should he be lying to see them, to pretend to see them the way you see them? It's not always that someone's lying. It's just that they don't see it the same way as you do, particularly if it's not showing up in the examination. So I don't know that I'm not saying that they're all good guys, but I think it comes off as less than credible when we just assume that someone doing their job, if it doesn't go our way, is lying. You know what I mean? It's their interpretation. It sucks. Don't get me wrong, but, I don't know that that's going to be a winning strategy for you. Not just here, but in anything. It just sets yourself up for not doing what you need to do to make your evidence better. It's like an excuse. Sorry. Russell, again, I don't practice MSP, and so I'm going to have to direct you to someone else who does. Find someone who answers questions freely online and see what they say and see if they're a certified, Medicare specialist, and they can help you, or call Medicare. Or if you wanted us to spend the time and research it, we could, but that's going to be a prepaid consult. We're going to have to carve that into the schedule, same schedule that helps pay the bills. So it's what we got to do. Limitless Boom. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Limitless. Is it true that military veterans who are 100% PNT, pardon me, that's will receive a priority when applying for Social Security disability insurance? yes, they will fall into that category, as you've heard up above. That doesn't necessarily mean it goes all that much faster or all that much more. However, they're supposed to be put in priority. And so, like, you should be getting an adjudicator before a person that might have gotten there before you. You do get to jump the line in terms of process like that. Now, I will say you're going to want to have the proof that you are 100% PNT. So have that ready when you, I mean, if you have a lawyer, send it to them. We mark it on our intake, even if we don't have the form yet from the client. But, you know, once you have it, you want to get that in. The proof statement from the VA. And yeah, you can always follow up with them too and make sure that they got it and they saw it and they processed it as a veteran priority. Oh, no, I know what you meant. Sometimes when I answer a question, I throw in all the extra clarifications. It's not so much because I didn't think you knew it. It's because everyone else listening needs to know it. Okay? But I appreciate you. Thank you. Delia says, I am all liked and subscribed. Thank you, Delia. Justin Yu is in the house. Hey, Stephanie, how's it going? It's just dandy, Justin. Okay, Russell's asking his question again. So, Russell, I'm just going to bypass you because you're kind of getting duplicative here. Russell, just so you know, I'm a Social Security Disability and SSI attorney. I'm not a Medicare attorney. That's why the name of the channel is what it is. Heather Ash says, I know I'm young and my situation may not be solid enough to risk, but I am strongly considering reaching out to see what you think. I just can't keep up as good as I have the past 17 months. You can always reach out. I know there are wait lists and stuff for certain categories, so you might get that response, but you know, and you're always free to come here and ask questions for sure. Just doesn't mean we can represent. There's so many people in line ahead, and I get requests like every week from somebody who says, you know, and we have to explain, like, there are people that have asked ahead of you, and we just can't shuffle people because, and I know you're not asking for that, Heather, because then there would really be no trust factor, and it would not be fair. Mr. Pet Mom said, I'm really glad I got the notification and remembered about your Q&A today. Oh, sweet. Are you subscribed in order to get that, Mr. Pet Mom? Or is that, how does that work? I don't even know. Russell says, I'm just going to put up here what you said, Russell. Why skip me twice? I'm a male. Russell, I answered you. Did you listen? Okay, I answered you above, before you. So you have to, unless I'm answering you and we're behind, but you posted this at 2:11, it's now 2:21. So I believe I probably answered you before 10 minutes ago, but if I didn't, now you know that I have, okay? Patience. I don't jump ahead on here either, okay? First in, first out gets the question answered. Yeah. Biden 46 Jr. Hi there. I have a question. I was approved for SSI in 2003, got a CDR in 2019. I think I've seen this question before, right? I think I responded to it. Okay, but for everybody else's edification who doesn't read all the posted questions with the answers. Okay. I have a question. I was approved for SSI in 2003 and got a CDR in 2019. Okay, and he passed it. They got a letter saying no review at this time. Now in 2026, I get another CDR. Should I be worried? It depends on what you've been doing. Have you been treating robustly enough for the things that you won on? Did you improve? If you did improve, then yes, you can be concerned because you don't know if that improvement is going to rise to the level of saying you could do a job now under the rules today. If you have not been treating, and this is a chronic problem sometimes when people win, they get a little comfortable and they stop treating because the treatment doesn't really help and they forget that they actually need evidence that they need a treatment for their CDR. So if you haven't been treating, Jump on it now. By the time your CDR comes to fruition and or you have to appeal it if it gets denied, you will now have some fodder to prove that, in fact, you have continued to be. You might have a gap, though. Let's say you have a multi-year gap. You can't really prove necessarily that it continued for those 4 years you didn't go, and it suddenly popped up now when you went back. Suddenly I needed to. It just happens to coincide with when you said I was getting a CDR. So that's why kind of reasonable continuity is really important, guys. It just is. Keep your evidence in your back window. Always kind of steady. If, on the other hand, Biden Jr., I think this is Hunter, guys, you would, if you've been treating and if you've not improved, and if your medical records are clear that you have not improved, so you're going to want to get them and look at them. Ideally, is what I'd be doing if it was me. So that you know, if suddenly, if you had all these records that described you as really screwed up, and I assume it's a mental health issue, just from this post. You know, if your records suddenly say that you are so great, you're doing great, blah, blah. Sometimes mental health providers applaud themselves in your records to say how great you are, even when you haven't changed. You know, you're just kind of status quo. They're keeping you status quo, which is good, but they'll describe it as doing great, da-da-da. And now suddenly you look improved. That's a serious problem. Don't even get me started. Speaking of mental health providers, I recently got in a pre-hearing, well, it's post-hearing now, but the mental health provider didn't send the mental health records as requested by the patient and the SSA, and instead sent a one letter saying, saw the person from this date to this date for these diagnoses, and the patient continues to report these symptoms. Worthless as it's on a bull. I swear to you. It's like, really? Is that your idea of being helpful? Like, fortunately, I don't think we're going to need that crap. I really don't. I think we got that part of the case. But that's really disappointing. Aside from being lazy or not caring about your patient asks for everything. And you are basically telling your patient, no, I don't think so. Try to win without me, even though you've been paying me for X years. Sorry, that's how I feel about that. Erin says, I've been in therapy for 4 years, but this examining doctor was one and done. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say it's better than nothing, Erin, but I expounded on you the limitations of that, the one and done. And I'm sure you can understand why. Is it better than nothing? Yes, if it says what you needed to say. You only had one market, so I don't know that that's going to be enough either. Unless you're talking about it was an entire domain that was market. But I don't know if you're going to say that it is. So that examining doctor may not have known the rules and what those answers would mean. Or he did, and he's like, I'm just being honest. You know, you're only markedly limited in one tiny area, and the rest you're doing much better. I mean, we always make the side argument, which does not hold legal water, but we make it anyway. A lot of us. If someone is moderately limited in all these things, moderately limited, that's not mild. Don't you think that would significantly interfere with a job? They're moderately limited in making attendance on time. I mean, every vocational expert will say, if you miss work more than once a month, you're going to be terminated. So moderately sounds to me like it's at least once a month, right? So the way that words are interpreted are very strange under the law. Heather says, I just don't want to wait until I get denied the second time, then have to crunch everything together quickly. Yes, I'm 39, which is why I've been avoiding reaching out for help. I know. Because it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. But you can always fill out the eval, Heather, if you haven't already. I just don't know that there's going to be a category avenue in which you could be deferred because it's something set apart. I know. Russell says, I'm not a bad person. I know, Russell, but you were hounding me. You know, and I was trying to explain to you, if you have Social Security questions, by all means, and some basic Medicare questions. But I really do defer to my Medicare colleagues for that. I mean, there's a reason why I spend all the time knowing this stuff out the yin yang. Because if I had to do half this, half that, I'd only know half the amount. So that's why you might have been here when someone asked about taxation. And I said, I only know very limited basics. You know, when you start getting into more nitty gritty, particularly if it's about your own situation, I can't tell what someone's tax bracket's going to be. I don't know their whole situation. So I wouldn't know it for you either. But I never thought you were a bad person. I didn't like the activity. Okay? Nothing personal. I promise. So always feel free to come back. Heather says, I resigned in lieu of termination because my mental capacity and speed, mail carrier. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Tasha. I don't know if did you guys see that poop come out of her butt? And yes, it hit part of my clothing. Yeah, I guess it's got to go on wash. Goodness gracious, Tasha. Move away from me. She's a little too close. I had her moved over so that you guys could see her for those of you that are into the Tosh. I just got hair in my eye. Gosh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you feel better. That was an F and a SH combined, I think. That's why she feels better. If you guys get that immature joke. Okay. I remember, Heather, you were, okay, mail carrier. Most of my mail carriers, it's physical, I have to say. But obviously, the other can happen as well. Wasn't meeting my expectations. 8 months later, I had my brain surgery for my tumor. It's going to be all about your current symptoms and proof that you are unable to do a simple job. Mail carrier is not a simple job. You know, it's more complicated than that. So how do you prove that think about it. I'm going to give you guys like a one that you all have to think about. How do you prove that you cannot be an information clerk in a welcome center where you are behind the desk, you can sit or stand at will for any of those physical problems, and when your job is when someone comes in the door and says, where's the bathroom? Ma'am, it's third door to the left. So, you know, if you can't talk, maybe that would be a bona fide disqualifier. But, and then you have to have medical proof of why. What functional capacities that we normally have do you lack severely enough that you couldn't do the job? So you have to think about those really simple, doesn't take concentration, that one, right? Next to none. So it's a big mountain to climb. Mr. Pet Mom says, yes, I'm a prescriber. I think you mean subscriber. I hope. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Pocket change. Huh. Oops. Come on, Pocket. Why is your thing not showing up? It's like a clicker. I don't think we've met, Pocket. Nice to meet you. Good afternoon. I had my ALJ hearing yesterday morning. Ooh. Judge swore everyone in, asked vocational expert 2 questions, took 20 minutes. ALJ closed the hearing. Okay. Well, good luck to you. That doesn't tell us anything, but that's okay. Fingers crossed for you, and I hope you get an award. Yeah, quick hearing. The judge probably, the vocational responses would be the important part because they're going to be based on what those questions were. And the judge, oftentimes, you can kind of get a picture sometimes if it's potentially positive or potentially negative, and sometimes it's a complete 50-50. Jen Mee is in the house. Hi, Jen. Hi, Stephanie. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday to you, too. I just got here. My lawyers told me my second ALJ hearing, the remand hearing, is in May, exactly 3 years since the first one, and that was skipping AC, basically. Oh, you skipped AC, so you went and reapplied, I guess, right? Long story. Okay, well, fingers crossed for you there in May there, Jen. And remember, all the information you still provide to the ALJ or your lawyers do is going to be used for the new hearing, so don't stop treating, right? Fan Cave says, I just watched the answers. Watch the answers. My case is marked congressional interest, and my senator's office reached out to me. I'm 99.9% sure based on the way my hearing went, I'm going to win. Awesome. That's good to hear. And you're not winning because the senator reached out, just so you know. They're not allowed to press their finger on the thumb of favoritism for some to win and some not to win. They can just get that cog out of the wheel if something is lost. Like it should have been in line for a writer and it wasn't. It slipped through a crack or something like that. Which, you know, stranger things have happened. Yeah, Pet Mom. I know you meant subscriber. I was just having fun. Fan Cave said, by the way, I'm not rushing or bugging anybody. LOL. You did. You rushed them. And honestly, that's probably, I think it was not preferred, but I don't think it also changed. It would change. I mean, even if you were a complete jerk to them, I don't think that would change the response because the judge already made the decision. It just has to be put in writing. And if you're harassing the writing group through reception or whatever, or through the senator isn't calling the judge. The senator is contacting their liaison with the SSA, who then just looks to see where it is and reassures, yeah, it's in the writers group, blah, blah, blah. So I just say, when you're going to use something like that, use it with discretion, not where it's not going to help and not where it's not appropriate. And that could be a timing thing too. Jen says, my current therapist is my current therapist largely because she was willing to help me in filing my SSDI case. It has been 5 consistent years later now, and she has been my best therapist. That's good. I'm glad you like your therapist. A lot of people do, and some people don't. And it's got to be hard to find the one that you fit well with for all of us. Well, I don't have one, but if I did, I can imagine it would be really hard. I probably could use one, but I don't have one because I probably wouldn't like any. What you said about Heather's question made me wonder, what are the best types of evidence for the excessive absences and the break parts of the equation? What do they really... Well, let's say for break parts, if it's mental health, do you get bottled up where you're going to start screaming at people? Do you scream at people? Evidence would be, you know, a year ago, you told your therapist how you were in the supermarket and the line was long and you got so frustrated you had a very unreasonably low level of ability. You don't say in these words, but the theory is you went out and you started saying snide comments to all the people in line with you and raising your voice and then yelling at the cashier when you were like third person still in line, and you just behave very badly and you don't behave appropriately as we're supposed to do when we're in someone else's property in their store, and you were abusive, then that would show up later as an event that happened because you told her in real time. Now, was she a witness? No. So again, this is all subjective on its surface, but when things like that are consistently happening and they're evidenced in a way, in some way, through the medical aspect, not through you just saying it through a function report, although you'd want to mention it there too. It starts to build a picture that looks more credible than you just saying it at hearing, and it was never even... And I will go again, when I'm talking about the mental health provider records and their complete cause of many people losing their cases, let's say you did tell the mental health provider every time you had a really bad incident, and let's say they were happening every 2 weeks. It could include road rage. And I will say if it's road rage where a ticket is issued for you doing something bad, I would get those documents. That's objective. That's really good stuff. I'm not saying to go have road rage, guys. I'm just saying if that happens to be one of your symptoms, please. All right. The legal difficulties often follow severely mentally ill people, people with impulsivity lackings, control lackings. So, and it could be a low threshold of tolerance for frustration with normal things in the rest of the world, like the grocery store thing I was just telling you about. If you tell your provider, and I would tell more than one, like if you have a good PCP, that's someone to tell, but if not, you just do the best you can. Definitely your mental health provider. And when the mental health provider refuses to provide those records that have those details in them, you'll know exactly why I complain about the fact that they take advantage of the HIPAA carve-out that is exclusive only to them. They lobbied for it, they want it, and it hurts patients who are trying to prove their exact condition. And it is what it is. And until people start hounding their congresspeople to change the law, I guess it's going to continue that way. But when the mental health providers, kind of, and I know I'm going to sound mean here, but sit on their pedestal and say, no, I'm not going to give those. It's too much trouble, or I'm protecting you from yourself. Like, I got to keep your privacy. Like, the patient is actually asking for the patient's own records to help the patient and all of her struggles in life and all the insurance programs she could possibly have. And that mental health provider is the one that's blocking her way. So that's a little rant by me, yes, indeed. But aside from the fact that telling those incidents of where you would have needed to break away to not have that eruption. It could be, Jen, me, like I said, excessive flying off the handle. If you stay at home and it only happens at home, it's going to be harder to prove, unfortunately. But still always tell your therapist if you went on a rampage to your 12-year-old and it was completely inappropriate. Yeah, they might not want to share those because what if someone says diaper should be called in? I get that. Maybe don't include the fact that, but things that happen out and about can be really important. Sometimes they happen at the doctor's office. Doctor's office's office often doesn't mention them. I don't know why. I mean, it's a health symptom in front of their eyes, even if they're not treating you for it. But I know most people go to the doctor's office, so. But I would talk to the therapist about all of the disruptions, that things where you weren't able to exercise control of impulses. By the way, shoplifting is one of those things, probably. It's a whole different ballgame, though. Road rage, legal difficulties. If you miss a lot of doctor's visits, it's a double-edged sword. But if that is what happens, I would use that evidence, which you could see right from your medical portal, miss the appointment. When you miss an appointment because of a symptom, I think it's important to tell the doctor's office the symptom. It might be another way to get that little symptom, and the fact that it interrupted something that should have been a very normal endeavor for somebody, and you missed it. And what would happen if that had been at work? You had to be at work at that time. You would have missed work. Trying to think of other ways, Jen, but things like that. And again, so you have the absences part. That could be like OCD. I have to keep going back home. I get halfway down the street, and then I got to turn around and check that I locked the door. Things like that. Got to be said to the therapist, because it's actually it's all directly related to the diagnosis. If you break out, if you're very prone to cry on a dime for the slightest thing, and there's a lot of people, sometimes it's just like a tearfulness reaction, and other times, or including, but not always, when the slightest minute stress that would be normal for anybody else to just roll over with, and then the person has to leave the room in tears. I would be noting those. I'll try to give some thought if I can think of any more. If anybody else has any great suggestions, share them, because it is really important, because mental health symptoms and the severity is really, really hard to prove. It skipped date C. Jen's talking about her marathon of a claim process with the SSI. It skipped appeals counsel because my old lawyers made an error. Very unique situation. Yes to treating. I am actually sick. Of course, 5 consistent years of therapy, many more hospitalizations, plus inpatient treatment. Yeah, I know you've got it tough, Jen. And you have a good attitude. You're strong. You keep getting back up, girl. I love that. Pocket says, the ALJ mentioned she's seen evidence dating back to 2020 in my medical records. We were establishing the original onset date, 48 months back to the date 1/2022. My counsel said I'm getting paid. Oh, that's awesome. So he's pretty confident that the way she portrayed her questions and any response was that she was finding you disabled. So that's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I can't believe your attorney said that. I'm getting paid. I get it, but that's not usually the first thing that crosses my mind. Biden says, or I should say Hunter says, should I list any other diagnosis on my CDR other than my original disorder? Does it ask for all of your impairments? Then put them all. Why are you rethinking that? If it's a common sense English question and you know English, answer the question. And let me tell you why it's important to use every new thing that's come up or things that you didn't mention before, even though you went on the other thing. If you have improved in your original diagnosis, and by the way, we have video on this on the CDR and how this happens. If you asserted, say, mental health, and you prevailed, and now you have a CDR many years later, your mental health is actually much better for whatever reason. Maybe it's not great and you still don't think it could work, but it's definitely, from all appearances, you're not in the crazy whirlwind you were before. It could appear to be improved, right? Which begs for a full CDR. So now you have full CDR, and that improvement could be, he could now do one of those little information clerk jobs I was telling you guys about. Simple, unskilled, third grade job, no physical requirements. But what if you have an inability to sit and stand for an 8-hour day, even if you can alternate? Because now you've got physical problems that you didn't have 7 years ago. You can prevail on a CDR with the additional things, because maybe now you'd be over 50 and those physical things actually make the grids apply. They wouldn't have applied before. They weren't relevant. You were under 50. There's so many different things. So definitely include all new impairments and treat for them all vigorously and robustly. It's your full-time job, but it's not full-time. It's your most important part-time job. Unless you're like raising babies, that's different. Then it's your second most important. Okay? All right, Mr. Pete Mom says, can one collect SSI and SSDI at the same time? They sure can. If their SSDI is under the SSI level, they can get the balance to push them up to the SSI top level, which is high 9s now. That's the only way you can. And of course, you have to be poor enough by the SSA standards for SSI. You have to meet the poverty, I don't think they call it poverty, the needs-based criteria, which is resources and income. So the income from the SSDI is what's going to not let you get the full SSI, and only the amount that balances it up, because SSI counts every other dollar you get. But yeah, so if your SSDI is super low, you certainly can. It's called a concurrent claim when you put it in, and you're dual eligible. Fan Cave says, I was told when my appeal went to FDC, Federal District Court, last year, they could not get involved. Who, your attorneys? Okay, they don't practice in FDC court. That's most of us. Some people choose to, and they specialize in it. And that's where we usually direct people to go. Once it went back to AC, they have gotten updates every 30 to 60 days. I won in 2022 going for a closed period. Okay, so now you're trying to get the continuation period, right? So you had a reapplication, it sounds like. Or I see what you're saying. You're appealing the close date, I guess. If it's the same case, it sounds like it was. So are they still your attorneys of record, or did you kick them to the curb, or what's going on? Because if they were part of the original case and you have now merged with that original case to open up that end date, to appeal that end date, so it's not closed, then they are still probably your attorneys of record unless they withdrew or you withdrew them. So if you want to keep them, that's great. But you should be communicating with them, right? Are they going to represent you at hearing? All that? Okay, he said this to bring his onset date back. That means you have a whole new application, not the old one, and you're just trying to get the new. So you didn't try to appeal the old one where he decided it was a closed period and say, no, it's not closed, it continued. I'm appealing that question of it. That's not what you did. You have a new onset date, it sounds like. All right, either way, so you filed anew for the new date. Which might actually be strategically smart sometimes. Siren Song. Is it a good sign? Hi, Siren Song. I don't think we've met. Nice to meet you. Is it a good sign if you didn't have to do a CE or if you don't have a vocational expert at your hearing? Ooh. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. You don't have a CE and they don't award you. That's a problem. I have some of those cases where I got, and I'm like, you don't even have a CE. How did they deny you if they didn't double check? Unless they had zero medical information submitted and just claims, maybe. But it means that they didn't order records. And is that because the person wasn't treating? That would be a denial, but you could still appeal it. And now you're going to a hearing. Very rare. I don't know if in the last many, many years have I not had a vocational expert. And I'm trying to think back to when I maybe didn't, and I'm not even sure I can remember a case where I didn't. I feel like there must have been a time when I didn't, but they probably now require them because someone probably appealed and said there was no VE and he ordered this, and now there's probably some precedent, like better get a VE because judges, you're not VE, so you can't really make these decisions. Those particular, you can't answer those questions, I'm guessing. But I can't say whether it's a good sign or a bad sign without knowing your case. But if I didn't have a vocational expert at my hearing, I would almost expect to have an on-the-record award. I just submitted last week a pre-hearing brief that I also asked for an OTR. I don't normally do that unless it's the kind of case that would be suggestive of an OTR. Everyone thinks their case is suggestive of an OTR, and they don't know what they're talking about. So, but if he doesn't bring a vocational expert, it means he already knows whether there's no jobs or that there are jobs. So I can't really say that that's a positive or a negative sign. It is curious. So I'd love to hear back when you find out. That would be great. Pocket says, best advice to everyone on this wonderful panel is to have all your medical records available to the ALJ to examine. Well, yeah, you have to. That's your obligation, right? He's not going to know your medical problems and all the little things your doctor said all throughout unless it's in front of him. He's not allowed to. You can't imagine it. Buffet Noir says, great discussion. Please tap up the likes button. Thank you. Yeah, like and subscribe. People, doesn't cost you anything. And apparently YouTube likes it. Tom says, in recon phase, got last week. In recon phase, got last week. Says to call DDS, but they never answer. Leave a message. That's what the voicemail's for. It said to contact by the 19th or the case may get canceled. Leave a message. That's what it's for. And we received letter on the 16th. Yeah, I know. They give you a very short opportunity. If you have a barcode page, if for some reason you don't have a voicemail to call or to leave a message on, like if it goes to something that doesn't have voicemail, which would be unusual, but in reality, it does happen. There are tech glitches. I had one DDS person who never emptied the voicemail. So it would always say, voicemail's full. We're like, oh my God, someone's not doing their job. You can fax and say, I've been trying to call you. And fax it to the DDS number. And, what's going to happen is going to happen, but at least maybe you have some, you're not going to, necessarily reopen it, but you can leave a message, say, hi, I'm calling you back in response to your letter. I've left messages like this. Yeah, you said, yes, you sent a letter asking the claimant to call you. As you know, the claimant is directed by me never to call the DDS and that I'm to speak to you. So from now on, please direct your letters to me. And I'm looking at the letter, and I'm happy to give you any information you want, and I'll facilitate it more quickly than if you ask the claimant directly. However, you didn't include any of the questions in the letter, so that's slowing up this process. In the future, could you please always include your question in the letter when you want information from us, rather than playing phone tag. I said it'll avoid the phone tag. Yeah, I get like that. I actually have a blanket paragraph I put in the letters. It's what I do. And it doesn't work all the time. But if it works 30, 40, 50% of the time, I just saved like everybody 10 hours and made the case move faster. So therefore, Plus, plus for everybody. Tom says, also logged onto account and they wanted to verify my with my driver's license and image. Is this normal? I believe it might be if it's login.gov or id.me. I've already been in since they first started that, and I don't recall needing to do that, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Think about it. They really want to make sure that you are who you are before you get credentials to get in there, and then you don't share them with anybody else. Grand Cave says, applied in 20, got denied all the way through appeals council. Reapplied, got approved as of 2022. And that was the closed period, right? Got remanded twice, had hearing December 17th. Okay, so it sounds like, well, you didn't really say. You got approved, but you said got remanded twice. So I think you appealed your 2020 approval, right? And it got sent back and you got remanded twice. So that means that the judge denied you again and you asked for relief again to AC and it got remanded because you said twice. And now it's another hearing. Are you with the same judge? By this time, I'd be asking for a different judge. Judge said decision would be quick. Senator's office could not get involved. Well, yeah, they can't get involved unless there's something, I was going to say cognitively. If there's a cog in the wheel, then they can put a light under it. But if you're trying to get them to bend the arm of a judge on the merits, they can't do that. Siren says, what else can you do if your psychiatrist won't, I'm going to think you said won't, fill out a mental health statement for your hearing? That would be 99% of psychiatrists won't do that, so you're in good company. If he is a good psychiatrist, he well articulates his records that concern you, your condition, your symptoms at every visit. Trouble with psychiatrists, a lot of times, they only see them every 3 months, and it's for medications management, and they don't give you talk therapy, so they don't really know much about you. So a lot of ALJs don't put a lot of clout in that, you know, because they're not even giving opinions, because they're just giving you medicines, you know, cha-ching. So you are not alone. Sometimes if you have a compassionate mental health therapist, unlike some of the ones we've been talking about today, that don't send the records anyway, much less give an opinion statement. Sometimes they'll do it. But what you want is someone who actually well articulates, has a mental status exam form that they fill out on you, which they should be doing as proper documenters of their patients, so they can refer back and say, oh my gosh, for the last month, she's been tearful at every visit. We got a really, you know, emotional dysregulation going on here or something. You know, if they don't document this stuff, it's insane to think they can actually help. Because I don't think human brains are that good at remembering everything in such fine detail, particularly if they have a caseload of 100 people. But so your mental health therapists tend to be the ones that, and hopefully they're good, do more of that providing of details if they're not going to be the stingy, lazy kind who won't. And that's where a lot of the repeated diagnosis, but also this mental status at each session. Is she tearful? How's her affect? How's her speech pattern? How is her appearance? Is she hygienic? You know, some people have this severe depression. They really do their therapy sessions, and you could see that they've been unbathed for 2 weeks. You know, or their memory's so bad, and when the therapist says, so are you showering? And they say, yeah. When did you last shower? Well, 3 hours ago. And they could see like dirt and grime. You know what I mean? Then they know there's a little bit of a memory problem, cognition, right? But you just got to try to, when you see a problem with evidence, you have to think of other ways to get it. And it's just what you got to do. You have to figure out the workarounds. Or your attorney, if that's the kind of attorney they are. Okay, Tan. You've left 5 or 6 messages. Perfect. You did your job. Right? You left the messages. They asked you to call. You did. So don't beat yourself up. I don't know that 5 or 6 is helpful, because probably a lot of times they're outgoing messages. I don't know about your DDS person, but it'll say, if you've already left the message, please don't leave it again. I will get it within 48 hours and I will act accordingly, or something like that. Okay, so Fan Cave is talking about his FTC law firm that took over the case that he filed. Okay. Yeah, and a new brief case got remitted. Yeah, they're very good. I think they're very good. That's kind of like their specialty. I don't know them personally, but I definitely spoken to them here and there, and I think if they take your case, they think they have a really good shot at winning. So that's a positive. If they don't take your case, it doesn't mean you don't have a shot at winning. It's just that it's not as clear to them, and maybe you just need to try to find somebody else. Or remember, you could always file federal district court yourself. You just have to learn how to do it. Sorry, I'm getting dried out, guys. We're almost at 2 hours. Same judge, second denial, got to remit it again. Had 30 or none first application. Ongoing benefits protected as part of the voluntary remand. Yeah, on appeals, they do continue. Although yours was a closed period, so. Okay. Well, you picked a fun fight. All right. I cross my fingers for you, Fan Cave. Daly says, oh, and if you can become a member like me, I appreciate it. The members are really, really helpful. They alone probably bring in at least 3 new 1%er clients a year. I know that doesn't sound like much, guys, but it used to be 1. So we're probably about triple. Siren says, is it a good sign if you don't have to do a mental health exam? You mean a consultative examination, Siren? It is very rare for me not to see one. So, but I've seen it happen, and then they were denied too. So I just figured they dropped the ball. The SSA dropped the ball. The adjudicator wasn't doing their job. They wanted to get it off their plate. Boom, they hit a denial. Reduce their plate load, and wrongfully, of course. Mr. Pet Mom says, my therapist filled out one with no problem. See? You got a good one. Now the question is, and this doesn't have to do whether she's good or not, did she fill it out the way that would support an award or not support an award? She might meant to fill it out that it would support an award, but sometimes the best of intentions don't really work so well if they don't know what the checkoffs mean. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I said she was marked in this one area. Well, they might not have known that it takes 2 or something, My psychiatrist is willing, but I was approved, so she didn't have to. That's awesome. In my area, we have 1, maybe 2 psychiatrists. Yeah. But 1 works for like the Medicaid office now, or for one of the entities that provide for Medicaid. And the other one is still a solo. But I've seen him where he tries to charge his patient $500 for an opinion statement to fill out a form. $500. Where's your ethics, pal? I mean, they pay you for every visit. I don't get it. I just don't get it. And it's because your records are not so great. They're just asking you to clean up your act, and you're going to charge them for you to have the privilege of cleaning up your act. I'm appealing. This is Fan Cave. I'm appealing original denial because the ALJ ignored FTC AC2. All right, that's going to be a little complicated for everyone here. It almost doesn't really matter. You're back to the hearing, so that's good. Jen Me says, Siren Song of Beauty. She's referring to sirens, okay. But she makes a good point. Having a therapist who takes session notes each session was really important, even though the things I won in my first hearing, can't do past work, can only do low stress, need breaks. I would definitely say do not have somebody include the terminology can't do past work. Your therapist is not a vocational expert, and that is going to be shot down. And once they shoot down part of it, it kills the credibility for the whole thing. I've seen this a million times in decisions in the end. The provider who presumes to do the work of a vocational expert. They don't know what the The job that they're looking at is the job you did plus the job title you did as it is performed in the general economy, not at your particular location. Does your mental health therapist study that? Does she have credentials in that? Unlikely. It's very unlikely. And for this reason, that is considered her trying to put an opinion that is reserved for the commissioner. And they get greatly offended. I'm telling you, they're a bunch of sensitive little triggered people up there when it comes to seeing any provider. And I'm talking physical providers too. When they say he can't work, he can't do his old job. They don't have to say that. Say what he actually can't do and let the vocational expert then compare that to the job as it actually legally stands at that job. You see what I'm saying? And the mental health therapist was not even at your place of work to know exactly how it went, only what you said. And that's not going to be holding water either. So be careful about just that one part. The rest is good. Talking about can only do low stress things, needs breaks, mental health breaks to calm down or whatever, take a breather. It's just that first part of that sentence. Can't do past work, nix it. Nix it, nix it. Don't have them say that. Ooh, Siren says, what's an on the record award? All this is new. Okay. Short for, long for OTR, on the record record. We do a request for an on the record review and award. It is saying, can you look at this and just look at all the medical records? And here's my explanation of why they meet. Usually it's a listing. Usually if it's, I still do them if it's not listing. It's not really going to meet a listing, but it's very severe without meeting a listing because listings are a little different. If it's really, really severe, I will ask for, and I'll lay out the law, whether it's a grid and look at this. This is clearly, and it's got to be clear though. I mean, everything's got to be carved in stone almost. And that way they can make a decision for a fully favorable, on the record without having to do the hearing. Now, we've already prepared for the hearing, so that doesn't really save me the 100 hours I just spent. But, if it could save the stress of the few hours at the hearing for my client, all the better. And it's a bird in the hand as well. Sometimes sirens, they will say, hey, judge is interested in awarding and not needing a hearing, but he thinks a different onset date. Would your client be willing to amend the onset date to a year and 3 months after his alleged date? And then that's something to consider. And now that you already know what the judge is thinking, you already know he's not going to award you on the old date. So if you want to win on this round without appealing, you might consider amending. But if you're not willing to, then you say no. You have the hearing. He awards on the new date that he wanted anyway. It's called a partially favorable. And then if your client wants to appeal it, your client can appeal it. Doesn't mean the attorney's going to be willing to appeal it for them, by the way. Sometimes it's like, no, I don't think that's wise, and we're not going to assist in it. But you can get another lawyer who might. That's always possible too. That hasn't really crossed my desk, but I always look, because it could. I'm not always going to be willing to appeal everything for my clients just because they have a feeling that they want to. They always have the power to appeal. I just might not participate, And again, I don't think that's ever happened, but I always have to check. So far, I've always had, been willing to appeal. But usually we talk about it, and if it's a high risk, I explain to them why they might not want to. Siren says she has a lot of issues. By the way, guys, we're at 2 hours and 6 minutes. We're a little over time, so I'm going to try to clean up all these questions. I have a lot of issues that have gotten worse when I first applied, but I was told by my hearing paralegal, I didn't have to fill out a new function report. I have a lot of issues that have gotten worse. Yeah, we, I don't know. I forget where you said you are in the process, Siren. If you're still on initial, you probably don't have to send in another function report on initial, but the SSA will ask you to, the DDS, oftentimes nowadays, in a particular area where they're really backed up, they will, if you've been waiting 9 months, this has been 9 months in between your function report, they might ask you for another function report to update them. if you think about it, all the things that have gotten worse should be on all those updated medical visits you've been telling your attorney about, and they've been ordering those records or notifying the SSA of those records so the SSA can order them. And yeah, I'm just reading your thing here. Even if you don't describe it in a new function report, it should be clear if you're articulating to your doctors and they're properly recording, and you're going to the doctor even more because of the new issues. That should tell its own picture too. If you go to reconsideration, they're going to probably ask you for an updated function report. You'll do another one. And what I would do is look at your old one, see what's gotten worse, and add it. If you know, you can redo it. You know, you could say, you know, you could even say definitely all the same things as in the old answer I did for this, but here's what's gotten worse. Boom. So you're kind of incorporating the old stuff so they can't say it didn't still apply. Oh, she didn't say that still happens. Oh, yes, she did. That's a way of doing without having to take up more word space because they give you small spots, but you're still incorporating all that old information into the current time period. Just a little strategy. The decision that you were denied, Jen, was that I'm not sure what you're saying. You were denied, so it obviously wasn't the judge saying that you can't do prior work, right? Or did he say you couldn't do prior work, but you can do other work? Okay. Well, that's good. That's his decision. At least that means you meet step 4, right? My attorney sent me an email with instructions for my therapist for me to forward to my... Yeah, it's always sweet. Sometimes they'll... Yeah, and then, I mean, that's okay. We would do that if we have a doctor that usually, you know, if there's a doctor that's going to be, that is expressed to the client, that's, you know, knows of the case. And mind you, there's reasons why sometimes you don't tell a doctor unless you know that they're really on your side. Because a lot of them aren't. But we'll have, you know, if it's, sometimes we'll have no, we'll feel like it's the strategy is best to take this risk, even if they don't know, and say, hey, look, ask your doctor if they would opine on these particular very set list of questions. We draft each one custom because you don't want to be giving your doctor one of those generics you find on the internet that the SSA generic, or they, you know, it has. I have a video on this, but there's negatives to doing that. Jen's saying it's the details of what they based it on came from my therapist's detailed notes, although they, in error, tried to throw out her whole opinion. Oh, so they cherry picked. Might have been one of the reasons why you got it remanded. Is that what you're thinking it is? Like they picked out some, but not the ones that really would help you? I mean, was the judge quoting? He was quoting the therapist that said, she can't do prior work. Did the judge say, and I find that to be credible, that she can't do prior work? It's not clear. I'm sorry. It's so hard to hear when you're just typing in little blurbs. But yeah, I mean, one of the appealable things we present is that if a judge picked one piece of evidence to support a denial, but then ignored the part that would have supported an approval said by the same person and didn't explain it. If he explains why, and it's, you know, and he has a reasonable basis, doesn't have to be the one that you and I would have, but if it's reasonable for someone to have, it's not unreasonable, I think is the proper word, then that's fine. But oftentimes they don't go to that trouble and they just don't include it. And now they're cherry picking. Limitless says, how does one know when to focus on mental health or physical for one's application if he or she has both, but one may... You don't, in my opinion, you go balls to the wall on all of your impairments. Don't you decide what's going to be most imperative, because you don't know what's going to be stronger under the law, and you're not going to know until you see the records. So you should be going full blast treatment for certainly all the majors. And I would also go, you don't know necessarily that the minors are not going to be majors in your case. You know, you got hand cramps and some arthritis in your fingers, and you don't think it's a big deal because you have a job where you have to use your back. And you got bad herniations and impinged nerves and all this stuff in your back. The hands are totally second fiddle. Those hands might be the thing that clinches your case. So, and never, if you're over 50, never, ever, ever leave out your physical. Oftentimes you don't want to leave out your mental either, but you can't even use the grids without the physical. If you have a mental case and only mental case, you cannot use the grids. So those are just some major rules of thumb that you have to know. So don't you think about what to focus on. Let your lawyer do that, Limitless. You treat for everything. And you know, if your lawyer hasn't mentioned, ask the lawyer, is it okay for me to just be using my PCP to treat for this, or do I need a specialist for strongest evidence? Jennifer Cologne is in the house. Hi, Stephanie. Hope you're having a great day. How long are you seeing for the results from an ALJ hearing right now on average? It's probably 6 to 10 weeks, I'd say. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's the earliest. I shouldn't say that's the average, because I'm not seeing things earlier than that. Maybe 2 months is the average. Meow Meow's in the house. My judge asked to change my onset date, and I happily agreed. So you get what I'm saying, right? Sometimes a bird in the hand. And if you want the whole process to be over, that's a large part of it too. I have a fellow who won with a onset date in the last year, but he's been out of work for, say, 3. And they did it with the whole birthday thing, you know, turned 55, blah, blah. And I told him his options, and I would have supported him on whatever he decided to do. And he said, I don't want to. He goes, I'm tired. I totally get it. So, and it's funny because sometimes like, but you're going to get paid such a crappy fee, you know, like $500 for 3 years of work. And I'm like, don't you worry about that. That's a business. That's a business thing. That's not something any individual client of mine should ever think about. Just as if I got a 9,200 and I worked for a year or for 2 months, don't think about that either. You know what I mean? It all comes out in the wash. So I don't want anybody worried about it. It was my pleasure, and I'm just so glad he's won, so he has this behind him. And he can move on with a little bit of peace. And hopefully everything else will start to get improved as well as a result. Little Nutty says, is it important to continue physical therapy even though it's not helping? I'd be careful when we say it's not helping, because the therapy records will say whether you're getting, if you're doing 1 additional rep than you were, and then it means it's helping, it means you're getting stronger. Maybe you're not feeling like it's helping, but feelings are not always all that important. Now, if it's hurting you, you need to report that, you know, because there could be a reason why you should be stopping, but you want it to be clear that it is hurting you. It would be nice if before that happens, you gave it a good shot and recognize that PT is going to hurt at first. There's going to be soreness, going to be all this stuff. And for some people, soreness feels worse than for other people. But there are times when physical therapy is contraindicated once the prescriber knows how severe the pain is. Will it take away from you being able to develop certain evidence for the following weeks? Absolutely it will. But you got to do what you got to do, and you got to do what's safest for you, right? Just the mere not helping, I think, is really a medical answer and not really a patient answer, at least at first. And just know that if you stop developing evidence of the pain. So if it's not helping because you're feeling 100%, okay, well, then you're probably telling your therapist, I feel 100%, I am all better. Okay, well, and that is great for you. And your case can end because you're no longer disabled, but you follow what I'm saying? That's probably not what you're talking about. You're just thinking like, I don't feel any better, and I'm not doing handsprings like I used to, even though I'm doing the PT. That's not necessarily what PT is all about. You know, it's like strength training almost for us oldies. Like, do 2 planks a day to strengthen that core. You know, most minimal stuff is because it's so out of shape. But you know, it's not going to make me feel good. I'm not going to feel like Superman, but it's going to have incremental little things that I'm not going to notice. I've done it before, and it does actually happen, but it takes a long time. So just look at it maybe with that little eye to it also before you make your decision. It says, thanks, solid advice. You're welcome. He says, no, the ALJ, so the ALJ said, Jen, that you can't do your prior job, but you need a lot of breaks and you need something else. And then he denied you? He said he didn't give you the whole approval. Did he give you a partial, like a partial, you're disabled as of this date, but not the prior date? And you're appealing the partially favorable? Because he said the whole approval, which implies that he gave you a partial approval. Yeah, it would be kind of funny if the ALJ says that you can't work. I don't have your quote in front of me, but you can't work, but you need lots of breaks. You can't do your prior work, and you need extra breaks, and I forget the other thing you needed. Yeah, that would be a little weird. The only way, because that would mean you would need accommodation if it's said that way, potentially. Now, people say, well, if I need, and the argument always is, if someone needs an accommodation, then it's not a job in substantial numbers in the competitive workforce, because accommodations by definitions are not performed as they are in the competitive workforce. Okay. When is it that if you can do an accommodated job, you lose SSD? There is a time, and that's when your prior relevant work was under accommodation. If it was accommodated and you performed it fine, that means you can do past work as you performed it. Even with despite the fact that it's an accommodation, it'll still be held against you as being able to do your prior work. So be careful when you're going to start babbling about what you consider to be an accommodation, because if it's legally not an accommodation and you just think of it that way in layman, vernacular, you could be shooting yourself in the foot by having it categorized as an accommodated work, and now you have to prove that you can't even do accommodated work. And because it's easier than the regular work, it's harder to prove you can't do it. Even though you know you can't do it, it's still harder to prove. And that's what it's all about. Jen says, my therapist's opinions, my attempt years prior, and the factor of excessive absences. Okay. Now we're getting in the weeds here, because before you said it was not the way I read it, not saying that you said it wrong. It's just the way it's coming out in bits and pieces. The judge said I'd have excessive absences, and the judge said I would need breaks every 2 hours. Oh, yeah. Every 2 hours, a 50-minute break is considered normal. So that won't help. If it's more breaks than that, though, that's when. But the excessive absences itself would also be. So that would be if a judge finds that you would have excessive absences, that by definition means there's no work. Unless, of course, you had that accommodated job, which I don't think you did in your past relevant time period. I think you've been out of work more than that. Jennifer Cologne. Okay, so I'm getting closer. Thank you always for your answers and your opinions. You are so welcome. It is getting closer, Jennifer, for sure. It's hard though, right? To wait. It's like waiting for Christmas when you're a kid. Jen says, I haven't worked full-time since 2013, by the way, and I got really sick. I've made SGA since then. So then you have worked since then. But not, it doesn't matter if it's full-time, it's SGA. As you know this, I'm just saying this for everybody else. Then I have made SGA since then. I have my work credits, but I haven't worked consistently full-time hours-wise or role-wise. Okay. And that's helpful, I think. It can be if it's, clear. Well, yeah, she was making SGA, but you could tell, Judge, it was not full-time. It's one of those crumbs, I'd say. And remember that your work credits will not be useful to keep you insured for another claim if you had to do it, Jen May, unless you continue to get the credits with the part-time work going forward. So that would have to be some sort of minimal part-time, even if it's gigger work or working out of your own home, knitting sweaters and selling them, as long as you declare the income and pay taxes on all of it. Siren has her hearing next month. Little Nutty says, I told my PT that visits to his office requires additional pain medication. That's probably normal. But what does your PT say? Does he say, oh, we must stop? Or does he just say, oh, well, do you want to stop? I mean, is it medically recommended to stop? Or is it just, well, little nutty's uncomfortable. So, you know what I mean? And I'm being funny here, but I just want you to be careful to make sure it's, I know it's uncomfortable and painful perhaps, but, or is it the kind of soreness that if you just rest, you know, with a couple, if you can take ibuprofen, I don't know, some people can't, you know, you know, it's a couple hours of soreness, or maybe the next day soreness, and you take a couple of leave, I don't know, and you get through, and then you still get to continue building that strength and reporting how painful it is. That's really important. The pain while you're doing it, if you have it, if you have limited motion, all that gets recorded, and all that stuff is important to showing that you can't. At this time, you are disabled. Doesn't mean say you meet the 12 months, but it could, you know, it could say you're disabled. It could say you're disabled from that job over there, maybe the prior job, and if that's a step 4 type of situation, it can really, you know, make the difference. Mr. Pet Mom says, I haven't worked since April of 2021. Had back surgery in May of that year and applied for disability in June. I've also had several foot surgeries since then. Oh, those foot surgeries. What's worse, Pet Mom? Foot surgeries or back surgeries? In terms of how they feel. Siren, you're so welcome. Mr. Pet Mom was a CNA. Oh, yeah, wildly physical, and couldn't go back to that job. Definitely you went on step 4 with that, right? At least you passed step 4. And then if you're, I had to go to step 5. So be it, right? Mr. Pet Mom says, I'm thinking that's why the judge made such a quick decision in my favor. Well, if it was a grid case, yeah, that would be one of the 3 prongs that you had to prove. So anyway, I think Nutty's going to be our last one, guys, because it's almost 3:30 and we've been here since 1 o'clock. Little Nutty says, whose decision is it? Suffering for evidence? Listen, I do a lot of things medically that I didn't like. I had gallbladder explode and I decided to go for the surgery because otherwise I was going to be in too much pain. So I took the other pain of the surgery. We all make choices. We all make choices. So you make your choice. Okay. I'm just telling you some of the repercussions. You know, if I claim I have this and I don't present proof, guess what? I don't get to open the bank account. I don't present my ID. I don't get to do a lot of things. When I don't present the proof I need to prove, that's what it is. Does it cause me to suffer? It sure does. I had to drive all the way home and get that license that I forgot. I mean, real pain. You know, going up and down those stairs, that didn't feel good, but I did it. So I'm being facetious here, but it's definitely your decision. You make the decision on how strong you want your evidence to be. You are the boss of your evidence. And everybody needs to know that. You are the boss of your evidence. You decide how strong you want it to be or how willing you are to have it weaker and go with the consequences. As I say to everybody, generally speaking, we are to prove we can't do any of the 12,000 occupations in the economy, which is what we have to prove. Consider it like a big bowl, and there all the jobs are in there. And we have to carve them all out, you know, with the evidence. Now, every little crumb of evidence that we have, in my opinion, gets us close to 100% possibility of winning our case. If we do every little crumb that exists in the universe that we could do. And if we don't, we're willing to go a little bit away from the 100%. There is no such thing as 100%, by the way, but as close as we can to get to that imaginary 100%. And the reason why I say there's no 100% chance of winning is because there's too many wild cards. Who's your judge? What do the rules say? Et cetera, et cetera. Everyone's human, let's put it that way, including you, including me, including the judge. So when I give recommendations to my people, I would say, listen, it's your choice. I'm giving you the crumbs that help get you a step closer to 100%. For every crumb you don't do, it's one less step away from 100% that you'll be, but that's your decision because you're the adult and you control what evidence you're going to be willing to get. I only work with the evidence you give me, and that's my job. So that's what I'm talking about, Little Nutty, when I say, yeah, you got to make the decision. I'm trying to tell you what the consequences of the decision could be. Does it mean you're going to lose your case if you blow off PT? Not at all. Maybe you have super strong evidence otherwise. Maybe you're, I don't even know, in a wheelchair. wheelchair bound. You could win on a totally different ground. I don't know. We're talking about the benefits of PT and the evidence. And when we decide that the discomfort, inconvenience, or outright pain is too much to have us keep doing it, or as I said, if the medical doctor, what you talked to, who referred you, if you describe it and say, it's hurting me, it's hurting me, it's hurting me, and he says, oh, wow, okay, maybe we should stop. And if he does say that, then that's a medical recommendation. Make sure it's in the records. And if he does, you might want to say, is there a different conservative therapy? And that doesn't mean physical therapy. There's other conservative therapies that you would recommend I could do, because I really want to keep getting this going in the right direction. But that pain, it was just excruciating. If it's excruciating, if it's mild soreness, discomfort, then you make the choice. You always have to make the choice. But it's just things to think about, because you are the only one that has to live with the consequences, right? In your case. So when we talk from this side of it, we're talking only about evidence and legal repercussions. All right. Medical repercussions are between you and your doctor. So if he says, oh, you definitely got to stop, then, I would recommend you stop. I mean, I just always think you need to, I would recommend you consider what he says when you decide whether to stop, because you're still the boss of your own treatment. Also, he's not, right? So you decide, and you and your doctor are the two people that decide that. I only tell you what the consequences can be, okay? Because I think it's better to have more information, Nutty, than less. You're welcome, Jen. Jennifer Clone is saying that she recorded everything and had a journal for over 3 years leading up to this case. Over 14,000 pages of medical evidence. Your case had 14,000 pages? Oh my God, I'm looking at one now with 10,000. I'm like, this is one of my higher end ones. Wow. So that in your OHO was probably like, oh my God, I got to read 14 pages. A lot of pages. Jennifer Cologne says, I did as much as I could to make my case as strong as possible, so hopefully I'll have a good outcome. I think you sounded like you had a really good outcome. Fingers crossed still, Jen, until you get that decision. But yeah, I mean, I think you didn't want to have to do a choice, right, Jen? So you're like, I'm going to do what I got to do to get the evidence to the person that has to make the decision. That's the way I would go for it too. Tandy says, SOJ, hey, late. Yes, you're late. Look at, I sent a text. Okay, probably in the portal. That should help me when you get a chance. Bird dumped on you. I saw that. Yes, he did. She did. I've had birds since I was a very little girl. Wild ones that we raised, but crows and bluebirds and many blackbirds, grackles, robins. We had a mockingbird once. Did I say crows? Those are the coolest. Very cool. Let's see. Thank you for a great session. Oh, thank you, Mr. Pet Mom of 4. I'll definitely be here next week. Good. I can't wait to see you. Jenny says, can't text words good either. Okay. All good, guys. We're going to chime out now. Thank you for all coming. And remember, at 12 o'clock, there's our dailies at 12 p.m., although a couple times they were like 12:30 this week, I think. Yeah. Please like, subscribe, and share if you'd like. And definitely come here on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. because it's a fun little chat. And I'm happy to answer every question I possibly can with the way I see it as practicing for 21 years. All right. It's pretty much 7 days a week, too. All right. Bye, guys. Have a good one.